Attention that for the Hungarian Grand Prix, a special test will be conducted by Pirelli involving Ferrari, McLaren, and Racing Bulls. Why is this test being done? To verify Pirelli tires for the upcoming 2026 season. In today's video, we will see how it is structured, and in which other tracks we will see Pirelli tests. Let's see how Ferrari is preparing for the Hungarian Grand Prix, what setup work they will do for this weekend. We also need to talk about Red Bull updates, Audi's new sponsor, FI agreements, and finally, the Turkish Grand Prix. Before we start, please leave a support like, and now let's see everything in detail. The Hungarian Grand Prix weekend will not only mark the end of the first part of the season. Before the official start of the summer break, Ferrari and other teams will stop at Hungaroring on Tuesday, August 5th and Wednesday, August 6th to host test sessions dedicated to one of the key aspects of 2026, namely the new tires. The 2 days in Budapest will be crucial for the final decision on the tires, which will then be homologated in 2 critical deadlines. The first deadline is by September 1st, 2025, when the structural design of the pneumatic components must be defined and approved, and by December 15th of this year. Pirelli must complete the development and selection of the final compounds. These deadlines explain why the work in Budapest will be carefully planned and conducted in close collaboration between Pirelli and the involved teams. Ferrari, Racing Bulls, McLaren, and also Alpine will participate in the tests with different approaches. Ferrari will only run for 1 day, just like McLaren and Racing Bulls, while Alpine will be the only team to cover both days. The test will be developed on 2 fronts: the definition of the new tire construction, focusing on the carcass and geometry, and the first experimentation of prototype compounds that will then need to be further validated in the coming months. After Budapest, the development program continues with another 6 days of official testing already scheduled. 2 days at Monza will provide data on a high-speed track with low aerodynamic load, 2 days at Mugello to simulate thermal stress and lateral load conditions, and 2 days in Mexico City at altitude to evaluate tire behavior with lower air density. All these sessions are designed to cover a full spectrum of conditions. The goal is clear: to arrive at a definitive specification capable of adapting to the new 2026 single-seaters, which will be lighter, less aerodynamic, and equipped with deeply revised hybrid engines. I test tires in this scenario, becoming as central as those in the wind tunnel. And the limited presence of Ferrari in these tests to just 1 day is a concrete sign of attention to the future. Maranello wants to avoid past mistakes to face 2026 on equal footing with Red Bull, McLaren, and Mercedes. Therefore, a single-seater designed on solid foundations will be necessary, and this also involves tire development. Pirelli, the sole supplier of the circus, continues to work side by side with the FIA and teams to ensure a balance between performance and safety in an increasingly sophisticated technical environment. It will be interesting to see how the teams perform in the tests next week after the Hungarian Grand Prix, where Ferrari will further work on the rear suspension to try to adapt it to a completely different circuit compared to Belgium. The tests next week on Pirelli 2026 tires also include the development of next year's Ferrari. In fact, after these tests in Hungary, the summer break will begin, but first, Maranello will work on next year's car to optimize it, having collected important data on next year's tires. Let's see how Ferrari is working for this weekend, because a very interesting race awaits us. After the introduction of the new rear suspension in Belgium, all eyes are on the Hungaroring. Yes, because the Hungarian Grand Prix will be the moment when we will truly understand if the technical upgrade brought by Maranello has worked or not. At Spa, some things were glimpsed, but the real answers will only come through the tight and winding curves of Budapest. The reason is simple: long straight tracks are rear limited. Here, the rear end is put under much more stress than elsewhere. Traction, brake stability, and rear tire management will be in the spotlight. And it is precisely here that the Ferrari SF25 will need to demonstrate whether the work on the new suspension has truly brought tangible benefits. The core of the change lies in ground clearance control. If the SF25 can stay closer to the designed reference plane, the gain is direct. It maximizes the efficiency of the Venturi channels, and therefore the entire aerodynamic package works better. But there is also a second fundamental goal: to expand the setup window. A more effective suspension allows the single-seater to adapt to different tracks without having to completely overhaul the setup each time. It's not just about having more traction or gaining an advantage at a single point on the track. It's about improving the overall balance of the car from race to race, and in modern Formula 1, this makes all the difference in the world. Of course, every modification also involves compromises. In Hungary, we will see if Ferrari has truly found a more stable balance, especially in medium-speed corners, where aerodynamic consistency becomes crucial. From the beginning of the year, we knew that shifting the balance toward the rear helped the SF25. It happened in Bahrain, it also happened in Monaco, and it could happen again in Budapest. Spa, despite the mixed conditions, saw a podium finish, but beware, the Belgian weekend was not the ideal environment to evaluate the new suspension. In qualifying, Hamilton lost the car due to braking issues, indicating that the team is still working on the static and dynamic brake setup. The work, in short, is still ongoing, but the initial signs are positive. There is also another important aspect: reducing compromises. In the past, on hybrid tracks, the SF25 struggled to find a setup that worked. If now the car can better adapt to each track, the progress will be real and tangible. Finally, there is the tire chapter. Overall, managing the tires is a thermal challenge. The rear axle tends to overheat due to continuous micromovements, and knowing how to keep temperatures in check will be crucial, especially in the race. Ferrari could have a historical advantage over the long run. The SF25 suffered less than its rivals in terms of rear tire wear. The real problem, however, has always appeared in qualifying, where it is difficult to bring the front axle up to temperature, while the rear end heats up too quickly. This leads to a thermal synchronization that penalizes grip in a single lap. Finding the perfect balance between front and rear in Budapest will be key. If the new suspension helps contain overheating and maintains more stable handling in corners, then the improvement will be visible from Saturday, and Ferrari's goal will be to arrive on Friday already with a setup that suits the drivers, allowing them to push to the limit and manage tire degradation, which we know will be an issue this weekend. In my opinion, Ferrari can compete behind McLaren and thus confirm itself as the second force. To fight for victory, Ferrari also needs to improve in qualifying. A track like Hungaroring, where overtaking is difficult, is essential. It is crucial to start as far forward as possible. McLaren will surely perform well on a rear-limited track like Hungary with many slow and winding corners. It's their ideal terrain. However, Ferrari, which has improved mechanical grip, could also perform very strongly. Let's also look at the latest news about Lewis Hamilton at Maranello. According to Riccardo Ceccarelli, founder of Formula Medicine and one of the most respected mental coaches in motorsport, Hamilton's poor qualifying performances on both Friday and Saturday in Belgium should not be underestimated. The 7-time world champion reportedly delivered 2 detailed dossiers to Ferrari containing technical and organizational proposals to improve not only the SF26, but also the team's internal structure. This move caused a stir and was not appreciated by everyone. According to Ceccarelli, the problem is not in the content, but in the method. A driver with Hamilton's experience can and should bring ideas, motivation, and even constructive criticism, but doing so through the press rather than in internal team meetings is a dynamic that risks undermining trust among the key figures of the team. Ceccarelli's words are very clear. A 7-time world champion has the right to express his opinion, but he must do so at the right time, in the right place, and with the right people. Communicating the delivery of a dossier to the press may seem like a hierarchical overstep. A team functions when there is respect for roles. The comparison is stark. It would be like Ferrari informing the press that they have prepared a document to teach Hamilton how to drive without errors after Spa. It would be absurd. Team principal Frederick Vasseur was struck by this move, although publicly he chose not to respond. According to rumors, his contract renewal is imminent, although the duration remains uncertain. For many, it's a last chance in an increasingly demanding environment. Ceccarelli, who knows Vasseur well, trusts him and said, He faced enormous difficulties in his first year and a half, but if given continuity, he can bring Ferrari back to where it deserves. I don't think anyone wanted that role. It's a dream for every motorsport manager. Meanwhile, there's another name that's starting to weigh more and more, which is Jerome D'Ambrosio. The former Belgian driver, now Vasseur's right-hand man, is taking on increasing responsibilities within the team and is truly the one who could be the successor to Vasseur. Seccarelli said, "I know him very well, I've worked with him. He's someone with intelligence, vision, and capability." If Vasseur manages to develop him properly, the duo could bring a new balance to Ferrari. Maybe this is the key to becoming competitive again. And while Maranello tries to resolve internal tensions, the track continues to tell a different story. Oscar Piastri has given a lesson in clarity and aggressiveness, winning at Spa with a masterful overtake. Norris responded, but it wasn't enough. Piastri seemed more calculating, more solid, almost more championship ready. Seccarelli interprets it this way: Norris enjoys every race, like a driver from a different era. Piastri is a strategist, looks far ahead, one always smiling, the other planning. That's the whole difference. So Ferrari faces a crossroads. On one side, the experience and ambition of Lewis Hamilton demanding results and change. On the other, the need to protect internal balance, avoiding fractures that could be costly in the long run. In the middle is Vasseur, increasingly under pressure, and D'Ambrosio, ready to take space. And we also heard from Benedetto Vigna after Silverstone, who stated Vasseur is our team principal, and Vigna also declared, "It's July, we are discussing it, there is trust, and we have time," referring obviously to the renewal of Vasseur's contract. According to Seccarelli, it would be proper to renew Vasseur to give him continuity, and he believes he can bring the skill back to Maranello. The fact is that negotiations were underway immediately after the Silverstone race, and an announcement of the renewal will probably come soon. The duration of the contract is still shrouded in mystery. It will probably be a multi-year contract, but the real test will be in 2026, where Vasseur will have no excuses and must prove he can lead the team at least to fight for the title. Some behind-the-scenes sources suggest that Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc are insisting on renewing Vasseur, and they have pressured Maranello to renew Vasseur. There was some doubt in the past months, but as of today, it seems that there is an intention to give continuity to Vasseur to keep the internal environment at Maranello stable. So we can say that the 678 project, that is the Ferrari of 2026, will be Vasseur's car. There will be no more excuses there, and we will actually see the value of the team principal, how well he can blend the team and lead a cohesive team toward victory. Suron D'Ambrosio. Be aware that as of today, he is a figure who stands beside Vasseur, his right-hand man, but later on, never say never, he could himself become the reference team principal at Ferrari and take Vasseur's place. The one who raised him within Ferrari and who selected him from the Mercedes environment. Let's remember, along with XR. But let's also look at how the development of Red Bull is progressing for Budapest. The first race with the new team principals and C was not a disaster, but it was also not the shakeup many expected. The RB21, this year's Red Bull, has shown unstable balance, and now it's Budapest's turn. The circuit perhaps represents the most challenging scenario possible for a Red Bull struggling to find the right balance. In the last 2 weekends, the Milton Keynes team has previewed some of the updates originally planned between Zon and Monza. The package was divided between Spa and Hungary. These are considered marginal modifications, but combined they could provide a slight increase in aerodynamic efficiency. Specifically, we are talking about a revision of the air intake ducts, a new profile for the undercut area with a modified vertical fin, and most importantly, updates to the front suspension system. Here, the upper arms have been redesigned. The first now features an extended exit edge to generate downwash. The second creates a controlled push to better manage the flows toward the upper part of the floor. These are small but targeted changes. However, the behavior on the track has not yet shown a clear leap in Belgium in terms of load and stability. In Budapest, much more will be needed. At Spa, Red Bull used a low downforce rear wing until the sprint, then switched to a more loaded version for the long race. The current doubt is what to bring to Hungary. The track demands extreme aerodynamics, traction, and stability out of the corners. A high downforce wing will surely arrive, but the official confirmation has not yet been received. Verstappen is not satisfied with the car's behavior, especially in medium-fast corners. We know that the Lungaro ring challenges the rear end, and as seen before in Monaco and Bahrain, whenever the balance needs to be shifted toward the rear, the RB21 struggles, so it might face more difficulties than Ferrari. However, Red Bull might aim for a higher aerodynamic load than expected, sacrificing speed to ensure stability and grip. Be aware that Red Bull might be playing a strong card, which is tire management. In Budapest, the problem is not just wear, but also localized overheating, and on this Red Bull has an advantage over its rivals in temperature management. We will see if they can leverage this aspect also in Hungary. Red Bull will compete with Ferrari, while Mercedes is expected to face a bit more difficulty compared to other Grands Prix, performing better in races with lots of grip, where tire wear is also lower, especially with more manageable overheating. On this point, Mercedes struggles, so we should expect a strong McLaren, followed by Ferrari, Red Bull, and finally Mercedes. But be aware that the title sponsor of Audi has been revealed. Audi officially enters Formula 1 in 2026, but they do not plan to do so quietly. After completing the acquisition, the Sauber team began a massive technical and infrastructural expansion between Switzerland and England. Now, the most anticipated announcement on the commercial front has also arrived. The title sponsor will be Revolut. Yes, the FinTech platform with over 60 million users worldwide. The Audi Gerrit Dollner site was clear. We are entering Formula 1 to build something relevant, sustainable, and lasting, and Revolut shares our values and vision. Team principal Jonathan Whitley, a former Red Bull, reiterated this. This is not just a sponsorship, it is an alliance based on innovation and ambition. Together, we want to redefine the boundaries of motorsport. Both companies, Audi and Revolut, focus on digitalization, efficiency, speed, and proximity to the customer user. Audi aims at a young and global audience. Revolut seeks visibility and excitement to reach the goal of 100 million users. So, Formula 1 becomes the perfect platform to expand, and there is much more behind this announcement. In fact, Audi has been working silently for over 2 years. They expanded the InWil headquarters by building a technical center in England to attract talent and also strengthened the management structure with Jonathan Whitley and Mattia Binotto, who is now the director of the long-term technical project. And be aware that while Audi is preparing for 2026 with new sponsors entering Formula 1 and Revolut being a big move for Audi, we also need to see how Aston Martin, from a technical perspective, aims to evolve its car in the direction of Mercedes. In the second half of the season, Aston Martin will introduce a rear suspension in the Mercedes style. Introduced by the Silver Arrows at the end of May in Imola, it has become central to the double podium achieved in Canada. And now Aston Martin is considering adopting the same suspension scheme by leveraging the still active technical synergy with Mercedes, at least until the end of 2025 before transitioning to power units in 2026. Surely Mercedes, after months of experiments and fluctuating results, has found a configuration that works. The new rear suspension has improved tire management, stability exiting corners, and extended the available setup window. We saw the results with a Montreal podium, good balance also in Austria, and a more predictable platform for Russell and Antonelli. Currently, Aston Martin is conducting comparative simulations at its Silverstone headquarters with the 2025 model, which is still active in the wind tunnel. Only if the overall package proves to be faster will we move on to production and integration of the new suspension. If Aston Martin decides to install this new Mercedes-style suspension, well, it means they still believe in making a step forward in 2025. And this will be the last package before all energies are focused on 2026, on the start of the new cycle with Honda and Alonso's ambition to return to fighting at the front alongside Adrian Newey, who is working behind the scenes to bring Aston Martin up to the level of top teams like Red Bull, McLaren, Ferrari, and Mercedes. But I want to address a topic that will become a paradox next year. We know that when testing previous cars, meaning testing cars from past years, 2-year-old cars are used compared to the current ones. But what will happen in 2026? Well, stay tuned. Practically, the customer teams that change engines next year, for example Aston Martin switching from Mercedes to Honda, will be able to use the current engine of the customer team during pre-season testing. So Aston Martin will race with the Honda engine in official races and official tests, but during pre-season testing, they can use the Mercedes engine. This is to give teams the opportunity to conduct these tests outside the season, but it involves an exorbitant increase in costs. But first, let's see which teams will change their power units in 2026. Audi will switch from using the Ferrari power unit, which they did with Sauber this year, to using their own power unit, the Audi engine. Aston Martin will switch from Mercedes to Honda. Alpine will switch from Renault to Mercedes. Red Bull and Racing Bulls will use their own Red Bull Ford engine, which will be developed by Red Bull Powertrains and Ford itself for the electric part, which will be built in Milton Keynes. To avoid a deadlock, the FIA has imposed a simple rule. The current engine suppliers will be required to provide engines to customer teams for the next 2 years as well. So Ferrari will have to supply Audi engines for testing, Mercedes will do the same with Aston Martin, and Honda will have to supply Red Bull and Racing Bulls. Essentially, these new customer teams changing engine suppliers will use the previous cars with the previous engines during testing, while in official testing and the season, they will use the new engine with the new car. The FIA has imposed this rule, but has not set a price cap. The cost of a double engine supply will significantly increase management costs. An engine supplier has already informed its former clients that costs in 2026 will double. This means that testing outside the season will cost more, even though this is not included in the budget cap expenses, such as in the wind tunnel and CFD. Being an expense outside the limit, teams, especially those in the mid-pack, might evaluate the effectiveness of these previous car tests to see if it makes sense to carry them out or not. Audi will definitely pay Ferrari for the old engines because they need to do many tests, especially with young drivers. Red Bull will use Honda engines for the 3 sprint cars that will directly compete with Aston Martin, but they are a top team and can afford to do these tests. Aston Martin is in a complicated situation because they will use Mercedes engines for the test for division cars or might not do these tests at all, starting a new partnership with Honda. The last thing I want to discuss is the Turkish Grand Prix because it might return to the calendar. Indeed, the Turkish Motorsport Federation has taken over the management of the track and aims to make the Turkish Grand Prix a regular fixture on the calendar, stating they can organize a high-level event. But what would be the advantage for Formula 1 to have the Turkish Grand Prix back on the calendar? Turkey has 85 million inhabitants, so quite a large population and a young audience passionate about motorsport. 1.2 million cars are sold annually, many of which are brands also present in Formula 1. The geographic location is key because it has 300 million people who can reach the circuit within 3 hours by flight. We know that Thailand has allocated 1.2 billion to host the GP in Bangkok starting from 2028. The earliest window to include the Turkish GP is from 2027, when Zandvoort will leave space in the calendar. Be aware that the Spanish GP in Barcelona has also not been renewed after 2026, so there are potentially 2 slots in the calendar. One of these could be occupied by the Turkish GP. Let me know in the comments your opinion on all the topics we discussed in the video. As always, I remind you to leave a like, subscribe, and activate notifications so you don't miss any news related to Formula 1 and Ferrari. Hear from Russ. That's all. See you at the next one.